right, greetings everybody, and welcome to Conflict Radio. Today is November 7th, 2024, and today on the show we have Nicole Frolick. Now, Nicole is a practical mystic experienced in intuitive life coaching, inner child healing, and the reclamation of one's secret self that uncovers the hidden and yet most valuable strength, talents, and untapped purpose of the soul. She is also the host of Enlighten Up, a weekly podcast, founder of The Forbidden Journey, a premium coaching program, has produced over 40 guided meditations, and offers a variety of online courses through her Alchemy Academy designed to help you deepen your intuitive abilities, heal your inner child, harmonize your masculine and feminine energies, and advance your growth from linear development into quantum leaps that are logarithmic in nature. Let's give a shout out. Let's see who's joining us so far. I see Blue Chicken is here. How you doing, Blue Chicken? And I guess everybody else will pile in here as we get going. Nicole, welcome to Conflict Radio. I hope that you're excited to be here. We're gonna have a good show, and
we are.
I'd like to talk to you about in your biography here. It talks about the alchemy. Could you explain exactly what alchemy is? Because in my mind, I always hear alchemy as like, some kind of mixture that the medieval people put together to make silver look like gold, and stuff like that. It's kind of a deceptive practice. At least, it started off that way. What would you say alchemy is?
Well, it is kind of that, like in a sense of it's taking a base material and turning it into something higher in value. So something that's more noble, which would be something like gold. And so when we think about ourselves of coming in at a base kind of energy, alchemy is basically an evolution, but it's allowing yourself to transform and transmute into different frequencies and energies that allow you to completely become a different material in essence. Of course, you're still always going to be the human, but the way I see it is the base is kind of like the ego, and the noble materials that you could be coming into are more of your higher self. So it's how do you start transforming more from leaving the ego state that we're all born with and moving more into a state of alignment with your highest self.
All right. And thanks for that. I do want to get into, the reason why I scheduled you on is because this is the Thursday after the election. And I thought, as many of us did, that it was going to be craziness out there. And it just seems like that what Trump did was just so overwhelming that they just completely just got depressed and sad, and they went away, and they're not rioting even. There's no, you know what I'm saying? Like, wow. I mean, is this not surprising?
No, it's not, because I think it's still coming.
Do you?
I think that if he had lost, it would have been the uprising now. But I think the uprising is coming later based off of a dream I had.
Could you tell us about it?
And also based off of the astrology during the inauguration.
Okay, are you talking about like planets lining up and stuff? I know we have Mercury coming into retrograde this month, right?
Yes. Mercury is going to be in retrograde at the end of this month on the 25th of November, and until about December 15th. But on December 6th, I believe, Mars is going to be going retrograde. And that's actually more important to look at when it comes to a sense of potential riots. Why? Because, well, Mars represents conflict, war. It represents the people in essence, but it also represents military and police. And so with it going retrograde, Mars, well, first of all, Mars in itself hates to be retrograde, like more so than I think any other planet, just because Mars is the initiator. Mars wants to move forward. It does not want to move backward. And so already it's uncomfortable. But then we have to look at on January 6th of all days, Mars is going to return back into the sign of Cancer, which is the sign of the home, the family, but it also represents domestic, anything domestic. So domestic land, domestic soil, your country. It's going to cause people to become very patriotic for a particular reason. We don't know. And so with it going back into Cancer and being there for 3.5 months, that is going to have some impact. So something I feel like is going to be happening in the first 3 to 4 months of 2025 that is going to be tied into what I feel is going to be a definite uprising of the people.
Okay. Well, I mean, I guess we'll see how this goes. Now, what'd you see in your dream?
So a few weeks ago, I had a dream. I think it was actually the day you reached out to me. It
Uh-oh.
was really interesting.
That night,
But
you mean, like, after?
yeah, the night before you reached out to me, I had this
I'm sorry to
dream.
do that to you.
And it was a very different dream than any other dreams that I usually have. So, in case your audience may not know, dreams that you tend to have closer to you waking up in the early hours of, like, well, not the early hours, but the hours, a few hours before you rising, those tend to be dreams that are clearing your subconscious mind. But when you're having dreams more towards like the deep hours of your night sleep, those can sometimes represent some kind of prediction, or you kind of seeing something into the future. It's possible. And this dream happened in those hours for me. But what was more prevalent to me that made this so unlike most dreams I ever had was how branded into my mind this dream was. Like, I couldn't forget a detail if I tried. And that's not like me. Usually my dreams start to fade away from me. I remember my dreams often, but a lot of the details start to get really fuzzy as the day goes on. This one,
Uh-huh.
I still remember it like I just woke up from it. And in this dream, I saw, like, I was in a city with my girlfriend who served in the military, and we were in this city with tall buildings, and I saw the energetic imprint of RFK, uh, and I saw the imprint of Trump's face, all side profiles, kind of almost like not on the buildings, but imprinted in just to the city. And in the dream, I remember that it felt like they were giving a talk or addressing the nation in some way. And all of a sudden, there was kind of like, I guess, an explosion, because there was all of these dust clouds starting to rise up and hover and start to come over the buildings and started moving towards where me and my friend were in the city. And everyone, it was like Armageddon, like mayhem.
What
Just
city
like you
was
kind of,
this?
pardon?
What city was this?
So I wasn't sure at the time, but here's what's interesting. It always, for some reason, every time I tap back into it, I got the name, I got the city Dallas,
Ah.
which I live in Denver. And so I was like, why am I feeling like Dallas? And it kind of just hit me actually a few hours ago when I was just on my channel live with my audience talking about it. And so we started running and going into, like, trying to find underground bunkers or something like that would like keep us safe. And my
Yeah.
girlfriend was on the phone talking to someone that she served with in the past. And I remember the conversation was like, the person on the other line, it was a male, and he was talking about how he had an idea this was coming, that there was hints that something of this nature was going to happen. And she was kind of like, how do we like let this happen and all this kind of stuff. So from what I understood from the dream and what was communicated to me was that there is, if Trump won the election, that there was likely going to be some sort of event on US soil that forces his hand to go to war. And I know that that is probably the opposite of what he would want to do based off of everything that he runs on and what we've known from his last presidency. And so I was like, that makes sense. I could see how that would be the only way he would go to war, is if someone forced his hand. But it had a very 9/11-esque feeling to it, which is why I think I saw the buildings and the smoke billowing and this idea of buildings coming down. They don't necessarily feel like the dream was meaning it to be literal, that there's going to be some explosion. I mean, there could be, but what I feel like was more of what the dream meant. And now that I have the information of watching his Joe Rogan interview and him saying that one of the first things he's going to do when he gets into office is release the JFK files.
And
And
that has to do with
so,
Dallas.
yeah. And so I was like, oh, well, that's what. So I'm like, it's got to be because I saw RFK's face and Trump, and I felt like Dallas. And that's so bizarre to me because I only have been to Dallas a couple times, and the last time was over 10 years. Like, I haven't thought about that city. And so I feel like him releasing the files is either that in itself is going to cause some sort of civil unrest and uproar, where maybe the war is against the internal enemy, or there's going to be an event to distract from the JFK files being released that is kind of got a 9/11-esque feeling that then forces his hand to go to war. I'm not really sure. I mean, I don't think any of us would ever know until it actually happens, but though that's kind of where I've been leaning into and feeling intuitively. That's what I've been getting. So I don't know. Like, what are your thoughts when I tell you that?
I mean, nothing surprises me anymore. My thoughts go to, I think that, and you've said this as well. I think that predictions are becoming harder to do because we're at a time where we don't even really know what timeline we're in. And to be honest with you, I look at it like the timelines have shifted and the Earths are starting to pull away from each other. And we could still choose which one to go on. We could jump over to the other one, or we can stay on the one that we're on. And as they get farther and farther apart from each other, the differences will become more clear, but it'll also be harder to jump back and forth between the two of them. So I think that I think that anything's possible right now because in our minds we're not really sure what's going on. And I think the timeline split when Trump had that assassination attempt in Pennsylvania because I mean he doesn't turn his head and he's done. They
No,
lose
I
the
know
election.
I mean, that in
I
itself.
mean something like that changes the entire planet, the trajectory of the planet. How can that not be a timeline shift? There's a timeline somewhere where that hit him, and the game's over. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but we could easily jump back to a negative timeline. So, I told my wife, I said, if that's not proof that we just timeline shifted, I don't know what is because, I mean, it's like there's a reality somewhere out there where, the shooter missed JFK.
Absolutely. And it's interesting you say that because I got strong messages at the end of May, and I did a video on this with my audience. And I said, I keep getting the message that there's going to be a major timeline shift coming up this summer. And part of that was because I knew at the time Jupiter was leaving Taurus and going into Gemini. But there was also there was something about that particular time. I had received messages that to get ready because we're going through a major timeline shift this summer. And I do think that that event was a clear indication that we did jump a timeline.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I mean, I knew right away. I knew right away. I said this is a timeline jump for sure. And that to me signified that we were on the correct path. I was like, "Yay, I made it to this timeline," like
Because that is miraculous. That is divine orchestration, what happened at that event.
yeah, I mean that is just insane. Let me give a quick shout out here. I see that there's a whole bunch of people in here. Choplo is here, Lord Sugal is here, AJK is here, Conundrum's in the house, Stefan Gaja is in the house. Let's see who else is here. Richard Minish, how you doing? King of Hukamundu is here, and Blue Chicken, you've been here since the beginning of the show. Welcome everybody to Conflict Radio. Do give us that thumbs up because it does help the algorithm, does help get more people in here. We are being shadow banned right now, so every thumbs up matters, and make sure you comment on the video. Let us know what you think about the timeline shift. Do you think we shifted, or do you think we didn't? Let us know in the comments down below. Nicole, I want to talk a little bit about, obviously we're going to get into healing and whatnot, but I want to talk more about, I mean, if things start going south before, like I said, that the timelines get too far apart from each other, it could cause people to go into a panic, so to speak, go into a lower vibration, and that could very well suck them back into the negative timeline. Do you agree that that's possible, that that could happen? And what could they do to stay in high vibration, to stay in the positive timeline as we move forward?
I'm not sure if I think that's the case, because if you're already, because the way I see it is, this is, and I think I spoke about this recently, was I kind of see the timelines as like two tracks, right? And they are kind of splitting in different directions. But you're also, the way I see it is, we're kind of straddling those two timelines. Sometimes we're in one, sometimes we're in another. But the one that you're likely going to end up in is the one that you're tending to spend more focus or energy or work towards. And you'll know in your own life what you're choosing. And so I don't feel like it's going to be like this kind of like, oh, am I going to make the cut kind of a thing. Like, I think, yes, there is a part of like, you really need to start choosing right now. But I think that when it comes to the actual split, it's going to be one of those ones where you will probably already have spent enough time on the one to know which one you're going to be on. And I think the one that you're going to end up, if you're conscious and you're aware, you're likely going to be on the higher timeline, pending you're not being a total jerk about your own like path and your own like healing and awareness. So I think that that's more of what's happening. I don't get that it's going to be this, like, so many of us are going to be in this limbo. It's just, what's more going to happen is that things that are just really going to fall away. Whatever timeline you've been spending more time on, like, you're going to start to see things just totally fall away that were part of the other timeline that you just can't. They're no longer in your. They're just no longer able to access anymore.
All right. So, I mean, is there a point where, what happens to the people that don't make this timeline? Do they just become NPCs, or do they get killed somehow, or do they just die, or you
No.
know what I'm saying? Like, I
Yeah.
mean,
I mean, there's no way of us all knowing one way or the other, but my sense is no. Um, there We're all choosing to experience this lifetime in a particular way. Taking the higher timeline, so to speak, and I hate using that word, but is not necessarily a better choice. It's a different experience. And it's maybe because you've learned what you need to experience on the lower timeline already, and you're ready for that higher timeline experience on Earth. And there will be some who are just not ready. They're not ready for that. They still have many things to learn or go through. And it's not that they're a bad soul or they've done anything wrong. I don't see it that way. It's just an agreement of what you're choosing to experience, or what is right for your soul's evolutionary path and growth.
all right. So, how do we stay in a higher vibration? How do we eliminate the negative and try to stay focused on positive? Because I know that that's really hard right now, and I feel like that we're also under some kind of attack from entities that want to keep our consciousness at a lower vibration, especially now. How do we avoid getting sucked into the trap of low vibration?
Well, when it comes to what I've recognized and seen with a lot of people, especially when it comes to entity attachments and feeling attacked by other entities, is that remember that most entities that are working against you are created by you. Most, not all, but most. And so the reality is that you hold the power of setting yourself free of those entities. And how you do it is there's a lot of different ways. You could work with someone, you could do your own healing. Like there's a variety of different ways that you could do it. But at the end of the day, you've got to come into your own power, and you've got to realize what you're choosing and not choosing. And to see the world through the lens of being attacked means you're going to experience a reality where you are indeed attacked. And so part of the higher frequency is choosing to shift your focus in a way where you're much more empowered, and that these things don't affect you. They can't affect you because you're not allowing it to. And that doesn't mean that we don't all have moments of, weak moments and things where we're just human and there's opportunities for things to interact with us. But at the end of the day, like for instance, when I do my plant medicine journeys, obviously anytime you're working with plant medicines that are going to allow you to access all different kinds of dimensions and realities, you
What are you
are
talking about specifically?
like mushroom. Okay, let's just say mushrooms. I do
Yeah.
often, like often in a sense of I work with them in my own spiritual journey and healing and development. But I remember I had whenever I go in, I'm responsible with my area first. So I will always do cleansing, saging, and I do like prayer. I bless things. I create a very sacred space. I also make sure that I'm going in with a very clear intention of what I'm wanting to experience. But when it comes to me clearing the space, I'm not doing it so much as because I'm worried that something's going to attack me, because now I'm at a place that I know I'm okay. If something tries, it's just not going to be able to penetrate me. I've got enough of my own security in my energetic field to know I'm okay, but also that my team that I work with in the different realms and dimensions are constantly working with me as well, because I've allowed it and I know it's there and it's very strong. So for instance, in one of my journeys, there was a moment where I could feel this entity starting to come into my room during the journey. And I saw, and it was kind of like a shadow figure coming in from a corner. And I remember looking at it going, okay, I see you. And my first instinct was starting to have a little bit of fear, right? I was like, oh, I don't want to have to deal with this in my journey. And but then I was like, but you know what? I know I'm okay. And then I reminded myself, I'm good. I'm safe. I'm protected. I'm not worried about you. And that is a big it is that energetically alone is a big shield, is because I wasn't allowing myself to go into the fear frequency that would allow it to work with me. And what ended up happening is, as I said, I'm not worried about you because I know I'm good. I've done everything that I know to do, and I know that I'm good in my surroundings of my guides. No sooner did I go back into my, like, okay, I'm ready to enjoy this, that a viper um literally in front of me went up like this and hissed at this entity. And the dark cloud just shot out of my room and left and never came back. And so I was like, oh, I've got a viper guide, like, I don't know, some kind of protection. I go, that was a first, never seen that before. But I know that I've got things in place. I may not always be aware of everything there, but I worked to put it in there. So what I'm trying to say, given telling that story, is that when you continuously buy into the narrative that you're always going to be attacked or that you're under attack, you will continue to live in a reality that makes it so, because that's your belief. Your beliefs are absolutely the most paramount thing that you should be focused on when wanting to shift your reality, because from those beliefs, you then create a frequency. Then that frequency starts to shape the lens of what not just you're perceiving, but then also what you're attracting towards you to make that belief true. So really taking ownership of your own energetic sovereignty is a key element in releasing yourself, bringing in your own freedom from energies that you don't want to interact with. Part of that also is that you need to understand that they have a place in this world, in this reality, in all
Those
different realities.
entities.
Any
You're
kind of
talking about
entity.
the entities. Yeah.
Yeah, any kind of negative entity that you're not a fan of, okay? Just know that all things have a purpose, and you can't necessarily be in resistance to it where, but you can also be like, okay, you can exist, just don't want you existing around me, and like, I'm just not here for it. But
Do you
doing
think
it
that
in a
that's
way
a
where
lower I'm sorry to interrupt, but do you think that that's a lower dimensional being, like 2D or
not necessarily 2D, I think it's more 4D. A lot of negative entities live in like that astral realm, right? Which is more fourth.
okay.
Mhm.
So now, what about the I have a note here since we're talking about that about parasitic entities and how they want to they basically want you to forget your soul. Is that true? You know how I've heard that parasitic entities like to get a hold of like you can actually carry them around with you. They're attached to you. Like they attach themselves to the chakra points and stuff. Do you know much about those?
Well, yeah, the whole thing is that most entities are parasitic in nature, and so they need a host to survive. And again, like I said, you've created most of the entities that are operating with you. And I know so many people do not like to hear that because they're going to say, "There's no way I would ever ask for that." But I've had that happen to me, and I started to understand is like I needed to learn how to declare my own energetic sovereignty. And I learned that through having certain entities come into my field and try to attach to me and have attached. I've had some attachments that I've had to clear out. And so part of me was like, okay, I've got to learn better energetic boundaries. I've got to learn that I don't want this. And where is this entity serving a belief in my subconscious that maybe I'm not aware of? And so I had to like really get honest with myself about that so that I could clear that out and not have it affect me. And again, I will say that we all have a subconscious mind that is operating at all times, and we don't really always know what's lurking in there and what beliefs are maybe creating something that allows for that entity to attach at maybe a moment of weakness. So and being like you've just allowed yourself to, you've run yourself down energetically, physically. I don't know, you're dealing with maybe someone in your life who's very toxic, like whatever it is, or you're allowing all of the collective energies to constantly bombard you, or so you have zero energetic boundaries in place. That is just it's a big lesson for a lot of empaths, and sometimes the entities are actually working in a way of teachers, even though they're not the nicest teachers, but they are.
Yeah, I heard that sometimes they're actually looking for guidance to ascend themselves.
I mean, it's very possible.
You know, that you can actually,
I can't see why
instead of
we would be in the nature of never being able to evolve.
yeah, yeah, like they're actually you could bring them with you into a higher state of being. You help them. But it's interesting how you say that they're 4D. So you could be lower frequency, but hi in a higher dimension.
Well, I mean, not necessarily fourth dimensional, but fourth, like, yeah, fourth dimension, not fourth density.
Yeah. What's the difference?
Well, the fourth dimension is the astral realm. So, that is where like we're going in our dream world, and that's where a lot of the creepiest stuff hang out. So when you're accessing the astral realm or the fourth dimension, yeah, you're gonna encounter some of that stuff.
Do you think that they're of this planet?
I mean, if you created them, then they have to be part of this planet.
Yeah, but I mean, if we could create anything then, I mean, we could manifest alien life. So we could have created them to come here from Pluto or something for all we know, right?
Potentially, yes.
See that now see
One of
this
the
is where I start to get confused on the whole manifestation thing because obviously we can manifest our own future. And a lot of times I think that if I'm manifesting my future, then everybody can manifest their future. Whereas now everybody is if I manifest I can't even explain it right because the way it's in my mind. So I'm gonna try my best to bear with me, everybody. If I manifest a reality for myself and I'm doing great in that reality, and I'm also manifesting everything around me. I'm manifesting the everything. The life around me is all manifested by me. Like how they say we're all fractals of God, right? And I'm manifesting all of this. So everybody that lives in a world that I manifested, they can also manifest their own lives. So are we just not seeing their best manifestation? Are we seeing their best manifestation, or is everybody's manifestation different from everybody else's? Like like my my reality is my own reality, and everybody else is just kind of in the background, so to speak, as an NPC. And then in their reality, as they manifest their reality, we're all NPCs in their reality. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, they're not experiencing my manifestation, they're experiencing their own. But yet I'm going about my own life experiencing my manifestation. Does that make any sense at all?
No, I know what you're trying to communicate. And this is where it gets really confusing for us
Yeah.
because we tend to think in very linear terms, right? And so if A joins B, then B joins C. And so, but the truth is that when we're manifesting things, we're at a particular frequency, right? We're in a certain frequency that is allowing for that manifestation to occur. That means that all things that align with that frequency, that are in agreement with that frequency, and have some, perhaps even some contract with that frequency, can show up. And that means that you're going to experience a version, because all things are happening at the same time, because the now is always now, right? The past, the future is always now. You can experience that just because you've aligned your frequency to do so.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about I know you have a I got it written down right here, a 3-day 180 retreat coming up, and you talked about the last one that you had. You were working with you had a lot of awakenings and transformations at your conference. What exactly do you mean by that, awakenings and transformations?
So, at my 3-day 180 retreat, we do utilize some plant medicine, but there's a lot of preparation that happens prior to the journeys. And at the last retreat, there were 3 women who had Kundalini awakenings, meaning that they completely awakened to the blissful state of creator and feeling pure love coming through them. um, each of them experienced it in different ways that was individual to what they were wanting to experience. One had incredible ET contact and was receiving a variety of different messages from different ET races for each and every one of us, as well as herself. One was reclaiming her power in a way that has completely transformed her life since leaving the retreat, making more money than she's ever made, getting opportunities, her business, her purpose, everything is now clear and defined and in motion, whereas before she had no idea what to do. And another one had this beautiful awakening to, like, almost, I want to say, like, it was a mother energy, but she started channeling a language that was so ancient. And she was getting all of these beautiful messages coming through. And so they were tapping into states of being, and their minds were completely open, not to mention their hearts fully opened to receiving the full breadth of what source is offering us. And through that, they started to realize and awaken to much more of their potential, and as a result has completely changed their lives since leaving the retreat.
Do you ever get into ayahuasca or mescaline at all?
I don't. I have personally done ayahuasca journeys, but I don't utilize them in my work because I think you need to be a very well trained shaman to be utilized using ayahuasca, and that is not something that I would even go near.
What's the difference between that and mushrooms?
So kind of like think about ayahuasca as a very galactic plant medicine that was gifted to earth, and mushrooms is more of like an earth gift, like a gift of earth in a sense of medicine. And so ayahuasca has a way of working with you that is, I mean, the purging effect that can come from ayahuasca is so very different. It's a much more intense experience, whether it could be a very good intense, but it could also be a very dark intense. And mushrooms has that capacity, but I find it's a much gentler journey than ayahuasca is. And so they have different ways. I think ayahuasca in itself has more galactic properties, and mushrooms is very much more working with this particular planet and the energies within this planet.
Okay. Yeah, I did mescaline once, and it scared me to death. I actually somebody had given me a couple hits of acid the other day, and I gave them away to a buddy of mine because I was afraid to do them. I do not like mushrooms or that kind of stuff at all. It gets me all stuffy and I can't breathe, and it's just a bad experience for me. So I don't
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, obviously, I don't think it's right for everyone. And like for me, weed just isn't agreeable with me. I don't like it. I don't like the way it makes me feel. I don't like it. I've never had a good experience on it. So I've only done it a couple times, and it was enough for me to know this isn't my plant. Mushrooms is definitely my plant. We just get along swimmingly. I don't have any issues ever with mushrooms. Ayahuasca has been an interesting journey and very different. But those are the only two and cacao, which is a very gentle heart opener. But those are the only ones that I've really done. But, when it comes to plant medicine, what it's ultimately doing at its core is getting you out of your own way. And it's allowing you to open up in possibilities and ways that you haven't allowed yourself to open up, to see the things that you are all maybe blocking. And so it really helps you overcome major obstacles that may otherwise take a lot of time to do on your own, or may even be almost impossible depending on what kind of trauma you've been through. So they definitely have a benefit. But that being said, I don't think they're for everyone. And I don't think you should be doing them unless you feel very called to it and you're entering it with the right intentions to work with them, because plant medicine will always meet you at the consciousness level that you meet that plant with. And so it's going to mirror that consciousness back to you.
All right. And you guys asking questions, keep asking the questions. We know we go into questions in about 20 more minutes, and we'll get to listeners' questions here then. But go ahead and keep asking them, and I am putting them off to the side for later. So as we go ahead and ask away, everybody. Hit that thumbs up. That always helps. All right, Nicole, I'm going to tell you something that I haven't told anybody yet.
Oh, okay.
All right. And all you guys, you've known me for years and years and years. I recently just found out that I have a something called borderline personality disorder.
Mm.
I've been that's what I have. It's an issue that I have, and I guess that as I put that out there for everybody to soak on for a little bit, I want to talk about how some better ways to heal from something like this. Now, this is caused by, as you guys know that have been on my show for a long, long time. I've had my real father took off when I was like 2. I was abused sexually by my stepfather, and when my mother found out when I was 13, she killed herself. So I was put into foster homes and stuff, and that probably has a lot to do with the I guess the things that I guess I try to avoid and not deal with. What would you recommend to somebody who just now started a campaign, I guess, to try to heal themselves of past traumas?
Oh, one of the best places to start is the inner child. Um, because you're getting to the roots of your issues. Um, do you mind if I just grab something really quickly? I want to look at something, and
Go
I'm just
ahead,
gonna.
because I wasn't going to drop that bomb on you today, but I mean this kind of this is the second show I've done since I've realized it, and it's something that I'm battling with.
Yeah,
And
well,
I
and
think if
yeah,
I'm not honest about it, then I'm not going to be able to
I
do
know. I
anything with it.
appreciate you sharing that with all of us. Let me just grab something because I
Yeah,
utilize
yeah,
it in a lot of my and how
yeah.
I help people. So let me
Go
just
ahead,
grab
and
it really.
I'll chat with everybody here for a minute. Okay, so I see Richard Minish here says they do help open your chakras and your heart, so you could try to get brain and heart coherence. And BPT, yeah, me too. We knew that, Michael. LOL. Yeah, I get it. You guys are a trip. You need to heal from all that trauma. I get it, but it's always something that I've avoided, something that I didn't really talk about or want to deal with. But as you get further on in life, the way you act and some of the things that you do or say, or like switching. Have you guys heard of this? Like you're either in or you're out. Like I guess with borderline personality disorder, you don't have an in between way of feeling about somebody. They're either in your they're either in your wheelhouse or they're not. There's in or out. There's no in between. And so that's what I need to work on. I need to work on allowing people to be in an in between. It's not I hate you, I love you, I hate you, I love you, I hate you, I love you. Then immediately I love you, I hate you. That's the thing. There's no in between. And that's one of the things I guess that I've got to deal with. AJK says microdose shrooms, Michael. Yes, that doesn't work very well for me. I don't really get into the shroom thing. I can't do that, but I do like to smoke the
No,
occasional.
that actually isn't something you want to play around with right now, because it actually can cause you more trauma if it's not done at the right dose, in the right setting, under the right circumstances. You got to be really careful when you're working with different mind traumas, because it is like a mind trauma in a sense, right? Let me see here. Okay.
Conundrum wants to know what my other half has to say about it. Yeah, I do
Um,
like this. I do like to smoke the MJ. I do. That seems to. Blue Chicken wants to know if I have trouble forgiving people for the little things. Well, of course, that's part of it, right? You're either in or you're out. So if you do something little, you're out right away. The walls are up, and you're not back in. That's the thing. I've got to work on not. And these walls I put up are so powerful. You know, I know. I'm kind of talking to them.
yeah.
It,
So, one of the things that can cause this to occur when you're looking at your past. So remember that your body, which is all like your nervous system, your brain, all of that, is going to manifest things that are not dealt with on the emotional level. So, going to the emotional roots can be extremely beneficial in starting to heal things and actually reverse what's kind of going on. So, with you, there could have been a possible shock that occurred in your childhood, which I think definitely, such as a death in the family, a divorce, an accident, or seeing a close friend or member of the family endure an incurable illness. You feel out of place, wanting to be somewhere where you're not. And I could see that definitely something that would have come up in your past. Feeling controlled and dominated and wanting to break free, fear that something is bad or dark inside of you that you have no control over, and a lot of internal aggression and frustration, which you don't know how to handle.
yeah,
Is there
that's about
anything?
it.
Is
Yeah,
that did anything really pop out to you? Like, oh yeah, that is like really hitting me hard.
it's kind of all. Well, I mean, it's all right there. You said it all. I mean, it's you're dealing with everything. And I'm putting here. I'm looking at. Let's see here. Uh, no connection between inner and outer realities, brain and body reverting to earlier stages of development due to suppressed childhood trauma.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. And so where is a good place for you to start is to actually start doing inner child healing. So I designed a course on how to heal your inner child based off the chakra system, because obviously each chakra will hold obviously a certain energy, but more importantly too, especially when we're healing stuff to do with family, The root chakra holds the father wound, and it holds the father energy or lack thereof. And the sacral chakra is home to the mother wound or the mother energy. And so working within these areas, so with your father being gone at such a young age, you probably find it very difficult to find any sense of security that you can really root in or trust. And so feeling safe is probably a really big need of your inner child. But more so that you actually deserve to be safe. I think also the fact that you were uprooted so much throughout your childhood and having to go to different foster homes is also an indication that the root chakra is extremely frayed and needing a lot of inner child healing work, specifically related to feeling safe, but also like wounds that you hold with your father. The sacral chakra is the chakra that is it's about the inner child's basic needs to feel your feelings. Okay, so how have you been about expressing your emotions? Have you been more of someone throughout, maybe now it's a little bit different, but earlier were you always suppressing your feelings or feeling like there were only certain feelings you could feel and not other feelings?
I think if it was if I was feeling negative about something, that was easier to come out than if I was to feel positive about something.
So it was harder to express positivity than
Yeah,
negativity?
yeah, like things are going good right now, it's a trap. If that
Okay,
makes sense.
so believing also, okay, so then that's also like ties into your self-worth, right? Which would also be related to your father because he left. So that would also be like, what, is I not worth it for you to stick around? Or like, like, why is my father not here? Like, what's wrong with me? But then also the self-worth is also tied into the mother wound as well. And that's like your sacral chakra is where your abundance centers are. And it's your sense of worthiness. Like it's this idea of I am allowed to have my feelings. I am allowed to change my feelings. I am allowed to have fun. I am allowed to be angry right now. And so when we don't feel like we're actually allowed to explore, express ourselves through the entire spectrum in the moment and change like on a dime. And this is why you'll see children like laughing 1 minute, crying the next, and going. And it's just because they're so open to being able to express anything and not feeling like they have to be in this like one emotion or that emotion until we start to project that onto them from like the parental, like how you're raised. And so the inner child needs to know, one, that it is allowed to feel worthy. It is allowed to have feelings that are positive, because what did it what I find probably with your situation, Michael, is that as much as you probably don't want to have the negativity, it was so much your normal that it was safe for you because you knew it. You don't know what's really coming around the corner if it's positive, and so it starts to feel unsafe. And so you will likely subconsciously start choosing to create something negative so that you start to feel safe again.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. So, you're saying this coming from the chakras, so should I concentrate on, like, a chakra healing?
Well, yes, you can, like, so, but each chakra is holding, so for instance, the root chakra is the basic need to, I have a right to have a life. I have a right to have a body. I have a right to feel safe. Those are like the basic needs. Like I have a right to have food, to have shelter, like all the basic foundations of that will sustain life, right? That is your root chakra. And then the sacral chakra is the right to, one, have permission to be allowed, but also to have change and variety, right? To change your mind. And so when you are working with each chakra, you want to work with those kind of needs with your inner child while incorporating. Maybe you're going to incorporate color therapy with that chakra. Maybe you're going to like use, like, I don't know if you work with your own energy in your hands and placing your hands over those particular chakras as you're working through it. But it's about understanding that the energy centers are holding specific wounds of your inner child, and that's why you're going to feel blocked. So, for instance,
Could I have parasites attached to those entities that have been there
yeah,
since?
you could have certain parasites that are feeding into those chakra centers,
Yeah.
because there's so much wounding there, and need for healing. And so they're kind of pulling, once you start to heal that though, and you also declare your own sovereignty from those, they won't be able to hook back in.
Okay. So what's the best way to do that?
Well, I mean, if
I mean, it's an overnight fix, right?
yeah, it's an overnight fix. You want to, ideally, I think you may want to work with someone through your inner child healing, or
Yeah.
you maybe want to do a course. Like, that's why I designed the course, is so that if you're not ready to work with someone, you kind of want to do some stuff on your own. This there, or and maybe you're going to find someone who's offering a course that really resonates with you. But if I think having specific guidance that's going to help you through the journey. One of the things that I found is so difficult, the most difficult thing that I found with my clients when working with their inner child, was that most people, the biggest obstacle that they have to overcome is actually connecting with their own inner child. So it's very difficult to do inner child healing when you don't even know how to connect with your own inner child. And so would, when was offering like services where I would do 1-to-1 hourly sessions with people, I would use that time initially to take them through a guided meditation that would help them reconnect to their inner child, so they knew how to do it on their own. And so I created that meditation in my inner child course, because I realized, like, the course means nothing if you don't know how to connect to your inner child. So learning how to do that is important. So I can just kind of give you some pointers on what you could try on your own, and anyone
All
in your
right.
audience. So one of the things that's so important is, when you're connecting with your inner child, is if you're having a hard time visualizing yourself, you can use an old photo, just so that you can kind of just reconnect to that part of you, that point in time. Because remember, when it comes to like quantum, like even like bilocation. Okay, when you're looking at a photo, you're literally like bilocating to that time in a way, right? You're here and you're also in that time frame at the same time. So in essence, it's like a bilocation, and that's why they've used scalar energy on photos to help heal you, because the energy's still there, right? So when you're using a photo, it will help you kind of just connect. Maybe some people need that visual help. Not everyone, but some people do.
Like a different way of looking at yourself in the mirror.
Yeah, kind of like also, yeah, exactly. And just a reminder, like, you sometimes you'll look at a photo and you instantly are brought back to a certain feeling or moment, something that you experienced, and a memory will come up. And so it kind of starts to build that reconnection to the past. And so going into your inner child, this is how I'll kind of take you guys through a little bit of a guided thing here.
All right.
What's important first is that you kind of close your eyes and you allow yourself to, one, bring your awareness to your pineal gland. Okay. And then start to drop your consciousness through your pineal gland down through your throat chakra into your heart chakra. And you're bringing your awareness of just your mind, but now connecting to your heart. Then drop your consciousness from your heart right down into your sacral. Okay, because that's where your feelings are. The sacral chakra rules and dominates your feelings. That's what it houses. And so it's really important, because we're going to be working with the emotions and the feelings. We really want to bring all of our awareness down through there. So connect mind, heart, and then into the sacral, which is your feelings and your intuition. It is also the home of the inner child. The sacral chakra is known as the home of the inner child. So as you start to drop your awareness into your sacral chakra, I always ask people to start envisioning a time when they were a child, a place that they really enjoyed visiting or going to. So for instance, mine was always the forest. My backyard always backed out onto a forest, and I loved going to the forest as a kid. If you don't have a place, whether it's maybe your grandma's home or a beach or a park or meadows, like I don't know where it is, but if you can't find a place that you can connect to or remember that you really felt, one, that you loved and you felt safe at, visualize as a child, like, was there something you used to imagine for yourself? Maybe you needed to use your imagination to create a safe place. Go to that place, even if it's not real. And then, so what I ask is that you find yourself as the adult version of you standing in that place in time. And this is what's so important. And this is what can really make or break your connection point. Start paying attention to every part of your surrounding as if you're actually there. So take note of the temperature of the air. Is the sun shining? Is it nighttime? Is there a breeze? Is there anything you can smell? Start running your hands over anything that is tactile. So for me, I would start running my hands along the bark of trees. I would feel my feet barefoot walking on the leaves on the ground, or like sticks and dirt and things like that. Really connect every sense that you utilize, because what you're doing is, through the visualization, you're using your mind to take you somewhere, and you're using your body through all your senses to align with your mind to believe it's real. And this is so important, because once you start connecting and you're feeling like you're there, your mind's going to really believe this is happening. And so as soon as you get to that point, I always ask my clients to look to the left of them and see their inner child. The reason I tell them to look to their left is because the left is your spiritual side. It is also your receiving side, is your feminine side. And so when you look to the left, you see your inner child standing there. Take note of a few things. One, what age did they come to you at? Take note of their hairstyle. Take note of the clothes they're wearing. Take note of all the details. What's their expression? What's their demeanor with you? Take note of it all. No judgment, just observe. Utilize this information, because this is how your inner child is going to start to give you clues onto where you're going to need to heal. So instead of choosing as the adult where you need to go, we're going to allow the inner child to show you where you need to go. And this is where you start to really allow your inner child to be your guide. And I have, through my own experience, felt like my inner child is one of my greatest guides. Just phenomenal what she's done for me. And so when you connect with your inner child, this is where you can start to choose to communicate to them, ask them if they are willing for you to hold them, holding them in your arms and connecting to what it feels like to be held, to let them know they're safe, to let them know they're loved. What emotions does that bring up in you? Is there anything the inner child wants to say to you? Maybe it's nothing, maybe they're not ready. Never force your inner child to interact with you if it's not ready in the ways that you're asking. But let it know that when the inner child's ready, you are there to receive them. So this is like a really powerful way to start getting clues. So for instance, I was connecting with my own inner child in a meditation one day, way back, like in 2016. And during this time, we were walking through the forest, as we do, and we climbed up a tree, because I loved climbing trees when I was a kid too. And we sat on this big branch, and she was sitting in front of me, and my back was leaned up against the trunk. And all of a sudden, we were just kind of chatting and looking around. She turned around towards me, and she looked at me and she says, "Are we okay?" And I said, "What do you mean?" She goes, "Are we okay?" And I said, "Of course we're okay." And she goes, "No, did we do anything bad?" And instantly, like, all of these tears started like coming down my face. And I just felt all of these emotions come up just from her saying that to me. And I knew there was something big there that I had to explore. And what I realized is that what later revealed itself in its entirety, but started as in, oh, like, if I do something bad, do I deserve what happens to me? And am I, am I always just supposed to be a good girl? Like, what happens if I'm a bad girl? And eventually what I came to was she helped reveal to me that I was sexually abused when I was 5 by my mom's uncle. And I had no recollection of it until 2019 is when the memory started to surface, of all places, while I was at a gynecology appointment. And it was out of the blue, spontaneous. And all of a sudden, my body started to remember it. I reverted back to feeling like I was 5 or 6 years old. And all I could think of while I waited for the doctor to enter into the room was, where's my mom and dad? I want my mom and dad. Where are they? I don't want to be alone. I don't want to be alone. I don't like this. I don't like this. And so she kind of helped me expose who it was, because at the time I couldn't remember. She gave me the name. We went into my Akashic records, all of that stuff. And so the inner child can be in a very, very potent and valuable guide for you, not just in your healing journey, but also awakening your psychic gifts. So much of my psychic gifts and ability to tune in came on so much faster when I did the deeper inner child healing work.
Yeah, and it seems like that's the most meaningful work, right? That can be done.
It
Yeah,
really is.
because that's where it all comes from, right? It all comes from our childhood issues.
There's so many, like, even like, before we went live, we were kind of talking about
Mhm.
soul fractal healing and reclamation. And, there's a lot to be reclaimed through doing the inner child work, so that we are feeling a lot more whole. And not just feeling whole, but what a lot of people don't realize is that when we're obviously a lot younger and we have an experience of some kind of trauma, whether it's, small trauma, big trauma, whatever kind of trauma, obviously to a child, it's always going to appear a lot bigger than what it does to us adults. But what happens is the child doesn't have the ability or the tools to know what to do with that trauma. They're operating on a subconscious mind until the age of 7. And so what often happens is, in order to survive, to move forward in life, you take that part of you and you almost like create a fractal. So imagine that like your whole body is like a puzzle piece, and that whatever part of you just got traumatized, it's maybe one or two or a few puzzle pieces, and you kind of take it away and throw it into the past, thinking that, well, I get rid of this, I get rid of my pain. And then you start to move forward. And then another event happens and you take more puzzle pieces and you leave them in the past. Eventually, the past always catches up with you, and will always catch up with you at the most inopportune times
Yeah,
to
yeah.
sabotage any forward movement, because you cannot move forward without all of you. You need those parts of you to move forward to the next step. And so reclaiming those parts of you become even more important, not just to heal, but because what I found with a lot of my work, with not just myself, but with my clients, is that your most potent gifts, strengths, and things that are attached to your purpose in this lifetime are usually held within the most painful parts of you. So the things that we throw away or think are not important, like we don't need this, actually are holding some of our biggest gems that we need in being able to move forward on our path of destiny to fulfill what it is that we're here to fulfill. So once you start bringing in those parts of you, you start to become a lot more potent in your power, and you're going to start to bring on the gifts that you were always meant to bring forward because of that.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. So it's just about cleaning up the fractals,
It
right? I
is.
mean,
So in when you're doing inner child healing, you are in essence doing soul fractal reclamation as well.
do they go back to together pretty easily once you clean them up?
Yeah, especially if you're ready to welcome them home. This is the thing too. Be willing to receive. Um, so much of us, so the biggest wound of the sacral chakra is guilt, and then followed by denial. So when we feel guilty about something, then we feel we need to deny ourselves. And so it is the home of the inner child. And so the biggest wound shows up as guilt and denial. So when we feel guilty for having something, because we should be allowed to have whatever we desire, and obviously within like a reason that's not going to impair someone else, like you're not infringing on someone else's sovereignty, but within your own sovereignty to have everything that you desire. That is your nature. That is the essence of source energy, right? Is to have all love, all abundance. And so, but when we have all these wounds, we end up feeling guilty, and then we end up denying it, and we start saying no. And so when we start to do this healing, it can feel very uncomfortable to start to receive more love into yourself, to start to say yes to positivity, all of these things, instead of denying it and saying no. And a lot of that comes from, can you get more comfortable with being uncomfortable with how much you're receiving? This was actually a really big lesson that came through in my first mushroom journey, where about 3.5 hours into my journey, I did it outside. I was up in Boulder, Colorado, and my journey was guided, and we did it by the Boulder Creek. And it was very rapid. So the water was very loud. And about 3.5 hours in, I'm like, I want to just go sit on the rocks and put my feet in the water. And so I sat there, and as I was sitting there, the energy of, because your senses are so heightened on these different psychedelics, everything in me was so open. My hearing, I could hear things from miles away. My guide couldn't believe what I was hearing. It's like I had the hearing beyond even a dog. And then my vision was so acute. Everything looked such high definition, the bubbles in the water, everything. And as I sat there, it felt like the water was getting louder and louder and louder, and the visions were becoming way too sharp and so crystal clear and acute that I was like getting overwhelmed. And also on top of that, I was receiving all of this intuitive information getting downloaded with, and I was like, oh my God, this is too much. I think I need to go back to where it's safe, in my little cushion, in the little cubby area that we created in this, like the forest. And just as I was about to leave, the river started to speak to me and said, no, we need you to stay. We need you to learn how to receive more than you've ever received before. And I was like, oh, I just started denying myself the ability to receive by not allowing myself to pick up on the higher energies. And I didn't realize it was just because I was uncomfortable. It was so much more than I was used to. And so it was a big lesson in understanding that when we go through this and we're trying to level up and allow ourselves to become more abundant, we're actually going to be very uncomfortable with receiving more, because we don't know yet how to allow that to happen. And we've got to also create more space within ourselves to receive. So it's just something to be aware of as you're going through your own healing journey, and as you're opening yourself up more to your own psychic abilities.
Yeah, like, there, it could be that there's a lot of guilt there too. Like, if I just kept my mouth shut, my mother would be alive today, right?
That is a big
So
guilt that shouldn't
there's
be on
a
you.
lot of that stuff there too.
Yeah.
Let
And you're
me,
going to have to go in with your inner child to let him know that it wasn't his fault.
yeah, I got some serious fucked up shit going on.
Mhm.
To put it lightly, I guess. Let me ask you this: what would you say to somebody? Because I notice this a lot with people. What do you think that if somebody is like, if I'm with somebody and I'm going to the grocery store or something, and they gotta apologize to everybody they walk to because they think that they're in their way, or you reach for a thing of milk and it's like, oh, I'm sorry, or you know what I mean? Like, you're constantly apologizing to people you don't know for just living your life. What is the reason why they would be doing something like that?
Root
Like,
chakra.
root chakra?
Yeah, it has something to do with your ability to, okay, so again, one of the number one basic needs of the inner child is to know that you have a right to have this life and to have this body. So again, kids that maybe feel like their parents didn't want them, or that they were a burden on their parents, will often struggle with this wound in the root chakra, and will maybe go around feeling like they don't deserve to even be here.
Yeah,
And so they're
I
constantly going
could
to
totally see
apologize
that.
for their own existence.
Yeah, just for being there. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's weird. That's not me, by the way. Just somebody I know. I'm like, stop saying sorry to everybody all the time.
But also
You're not doing
remember
it
that
wrong.
that could also stem from what I also see is very common. So the root chakra is again, your ability to feel safe, right? If the more secure you feel and rooted you feel, the easier it is for you to manifest things. It also is a reflection of your faith, your trust in God, the divine. And so when the root is frayed, you're lacking faith because you're in fear. That is the wound, is the root chakra is fear. And so your fear is I don't deserve to be here. Like I'm burdening people. So many times people will experience a trauma of the root chakra in one of two ways. When it's really affecting their own sense of safety or security, whether it might be abuse, whether it's physical, emotional, sexual, or just affecting their sense of security in general. They will oftentimes, especially when there's physical abuse or sexual abuse in the mix, will leave their body so that they don't feel the trauma, but also because they don't trust their body anymore. They don't have faith in their own body that it's safe to be in this body. This happens with a lot of empaths. A lot of empaths will do this at a young age, and they will have a hard time reintegrating back into their body because they just don't believe it's safe. And this will make it very, very difficult for anyone to truly manifest, to utilize their higher psychic intuitive gifts in a way that actually can help them in this world. So, because the more you get into your body and utilize your gifts, the more you are integrating mind, body, spirit. And you actually, I think one of the biggest missions of our experience here is to how do I experience everything that's beyond this physical realm and integrate it into this body so I can do both at the same time. I can have the physical and the ethereal. I can do the practical and the mystical all at the same time. I think that's ultimately like the big, I don't want to say it's the only goal, but I think in essence of integrating into the human form, it's like, how do you take your badass spiritual self and funnel it into this through this body and experience this life? I think that's really important.
Now, let me ask you this: with people like me or people that are dealing with these issues, if we were to die, say, you know, in a car wreck or whatever, had a heart attack, stroke, something happened, completely natural, and we didn't deal with these issues, we haven't dealt with them. Are we then not able to ascend because we haven't dealt with those issues, or do we have to come back then and try again, so to speak?
No, well, so I don't. I actually think ascension is in reality descension. So it is about how do I take the highest version of myself, the most aware version of myself, and integrate it into this physical body. That's going to allow you to be on that ascension path because you're
Uh-huh.
grounding the highest awareness possible. That creates the reality that we a lot of people talk about, like this new earth, right? And so it's more of like integrating the higher self into the physical body versus you going somewhere else. And so when you have an accident of that nature, that's usually written into your soul contract. That's something that if you, especially if you're at a younger age, you came in to have a certain experience and you likely have experienced what you needed to, and that the time is up. And that contract is also going to play into other people's contracts around you.
Yeah.
So I don't, it's not about like you don't get to, it's not that you're ascending, your soul is ascending somewhere. It's about how do you take the highest parts of you and utilize it in your lifetime right now. And that, to me, that's what the ascension path is.
Okay. All right. Well, that's pretty awesome, and I appreciate you spending some time with me on that. That was great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find you, and then we'll get into some listener questions.
Yeah, my website is NicoleFrolick.com, so it's really easy. And everything that you need, you can find there. And all my social media, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok is at Nicole Frolick. So if you're interested in maybe even coming to the retreat, that is on the homepage of the access is on the homepage of my website. And yeah, if you want to email me, just email me, Nicole at NicoleFrolick.com.
Yeah, and I've got all of the links down in the description box below, guys. Even the links to the I guess the event she has coming up, and maybe you want to go do some shrooms or something. Where is that event going to be?
Breckenridge, Colorado.
Oh, that's a great place to do it. I used to drive through there all the time on Route 9. Used to have to go over McKinney Mountain all the time.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's I love the land. It's very activating.
yeah, I drive through South Park to Canyon City. From there to Canyon City on Route 9 all the
Y
time.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, I used to bartend up on top of Beaver Creek, if you know where that is. I used to take the
Yes.
ski lift to work every day
Oh, that's so
up
cool.
at Saddle Spruce, if anybody knows where that is. All right, let's get into some of these listener questions. We don't have many of them, so you guys, if you have any questions, go ahead and ask away. Conundrum wants to know, what about daydreams that come true? I've had a few that have come true.
Oh, well, like the dream world, you're accessing it while still in waking state. So those daydreams are, you're accessing a certain reality that is allowing you to, like, you're actually when you're daydreaming. So what I would like to know, I don't know if the person's still in the chat, but when you're
Yeah, yes,
daydreaming,
here.
are you daydreaming intentionally to um or is it very like unconscious daydreaming?
This was a question asked back when you were talking about dreaming just before you wake up, and a lot of times I heard it's not about that you're just going to wake up that you have the most intense dreams. It's because the sun is just coming up over the horizon and the photons are hitting us differently.
Okay, okay.
So
So
when you talked earlier about, how, right at sunrise when you're about to wake up is the best, that's the best time to have those dreams, to pay attention to
no,
your
no,
dreams.
that's actually the time when you're gonna be clearing your subconscious.
Yeah,
So, like,
yeah.
how you kinda wake up and maybe you'll fall back asleep for 30 minutes, and that's when you have those crazy dreams. That's just actually your subconscious clearing stuff out for you. You're working through your subconscious at that time.
So
But when you're having, let's
it
say
doesn't matter what time of the day that is then.
no, not necessarily. Yeah, exactly, but usually though, usually within somewhere like in your 2nd, 3rd hour of sleep, 4th hour of sleep, maybe that's when, like, you could be accessing really interesting information, that where your soul is doing more work in other realms, or you might be getting access to predictive things, in your life coming up.
Yeah, I did a show with Tony Rodriguez. I don't know if you know
Yeah,
who
yeah,
he is.
I love Tony, he's a great guy.
He did a 20 and back, and he did this weird awakening thing with me that I also had a 20 and back, and I've also been having these recall dreams as I'm dealing with all of this that's going on, like,
Okay.
at the same exact time. So, like, just this morning, I was having recall dreams, and he said that the best time to have those recall dreams are when the sun's coming up early in the morning because something about the sun and the photons or protons from the sun actually are different on the planet at that point that you're able to tap into those. And I was curious if that's what you meant.
Yeah, no, that's a very different thing. That's a
Yeah.
completely different thing, and I can see why that would be very beneficial, especially to recall, because it's very activating of the pineal gland, especially too, like just that kind of lighting. But what I think Conundrum is asking, I would say that if it's just coming to you, um, okay, so you're just doing something and then the daydream just hits you, then you're more tuned in than you realize. And actually, one of your meditative states may be when you're just kind of in almost like an automatic mode of like doing things around the house or being on a walk. Like sometimes washing dishes for me allows for me to get messages when I'm in the shower, like just doing stuff that's very habitual. Running is a very meditative state. So you're probably actually that state and the motions and movements that you're doing, the activities are allowing you to enter into a state that allows you to access information that would be accessible in your dream state as well.
Yeah, and he just now commented, he says, "I could be doing something, and then the daydream just hits me." Like, he's not even really asleep.
Okay, so that may also, it may be coming to you as a daydream, but it's likely information that is being communicated to you for your own awareness. Like you're accessing it for some reason, whether it's to prepare yourself or let you know something's coming down the road, or like you're just starting to tap into like gifts that you can start to actually have more control over, where it's not just coming at you. Start to understand what that state is and start replicating it and working with it intentionally, as opposed to it just kind of coming here and there.
All right. Let me go over here to Nadia Danella says, "What about children? Do you think they draw negative to themselves?"
Um, so depending on, that's a really good question, Nadia. I remember my brother had night terrors growing up, and his bedroom was next to mine, and I mean bloody murder. He'd be screaming bloody murder, and I just didn't know where any of that came from. And so I think there's if the child has been through some kind of trauma, or experience something in their life, then they can start to, just out of fear or shame or guilt or any of those lower frequencies, can start to pull in negative entities to themselves. But also, children are so open. They're so open to everything. They see much more than we do, because they're still so new to this life, and they still have access to that source energy, that isn't really like they haven't cut it off yet the way we're kind of trained to as we get older. And so they may see things that start to scare them, and they may not understand them. And especially if you have no adults around you to teach or explain what's happening, that can be very scary to them. And so there may be a contract in place that child needs to work through, or maybe needs to understand later. And then there's also like, look, there's also the thing that people just get screwed with,
Yeah.
especially children who have great psychic gifts. They're known as soon as they enter the matrix, through the mother's womb. They're targeted. Sometimes they're targeted. Like that is a thing. But at the same time, there's a knowing on some level of that possibility happening. But of course, we don't ever remember any of that stuff when we come in, because
Do you
that's kind of the rule.
Yeah, do you think that the kids constantly being in their room on the video games and the tablets gonna have, like, massive negative effects on who they are as adults?
Not necessarily.
No?
Some, yes, but not necessarily. Uh, it's interesting because I think there's like with anything, everything has a positive and a negative. I remember I used to play video games a ton when I was younger. I love them. They were kind of just coming out as I was growing up. And I mean, we had Atari, we had all those things, right? And so I found it very interesting, and allowing my mind and sharpening like my reaction skills and all of that, and also understanding how, like, in a way it teaches you how this reality works, and like there's trapdoors and there's things and there's way of accessing and jumping levels, and in a way they're kind of teaching us how to work in this reality on some level. But of course, if a child doesn't have any socialization skills, and it's all on the computer, and they're not actually going outside and interacting with nature and things like that, yes, it's going to have some detriment. But then again, some people have it in their contract where like they're meant to play those levels of video games because it's part of like their life path. So it's kind of hard to judge. Everyone's going to be unique, but of course, like with anything, it depends, because I do feel like there are people where that path is well served by them to do that. And then of course there's others it's not.
Yeah, yeah. I know that, when video games were coming out when I was a kid, I think I was, uh 10 or 9 or 10 when the Nintendo first came out, and we were only allowed to play it if it was raining. Other than that, we had to be
Yeah.
outside. I wasn't allowed in the house.
Yeah, my mom constantly screamed at us to go outside.
Well, I mean, you can't send your kid outside anymore. They'll call the child protective services on you. You know, they're not supervised.
I
It's
know.
crazy. I mean, I remember being I was probably 6, 7 years old on my bike. I was miles from home. Miles from home on my bike, and nobody had any idea where I was. It's just be home before dark, right?
Yeah, I know. Completely different time.
Mm. All right, Blue Chicken wants to know if you can explain scalar energy.
I'm probably not the best person to explain it. I did have Tom Palladino on my podcast before he passed, and he was working with scalar energy. And so basically, the way it works is it's an it's a technology that is utilizing um, an energy that is able to penetrate. Like I said, he would point his technology at a picture, and it would um, use the energy in the light particles to connect and send in a certain frequency. So through the scalar energy, you can pick and choose certain frequencies that will help shift the actual bio makeup of the body through a photo. And it's this idea of knowing that we can be affected by things that are not immediately around us, right? And I think probably a lot of your audience is very familiar with that. So this idea of he explained it that it works in a sense of bilocation. So where you are, so for instance, if he was using my photo, I'd be here in Colorado. He was where he was. I can't remember exactly where he was. Maybe it was Florida. And he would point the scalar energy at it, and I would instantly, my body would start getting interaction with that energy, and it would start healing itself based off of the frequencies that were utilized through that technology. So it's very it works more on quantum properties
Mhm.
than anything else. But I'm not the best. I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm not giving the best explanation. It's not my forte. So I don't
Yeah,
want to.
yeah. Okay. All right. Let's see. We'll do one more from Conundrum here. He wants to know if one has an open mind, does the drugs that help with that, would one have a better experience than someone who doesn't have an open mind?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, that's just with
Absolutely.
anything, an open mind is better than no open mind, right?
And even stronger than an open mind is the willingness to completely surrender.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, um, and this was very much highlighted to me during an ayahuasca journey. So every time I do a plant medicine journey, I always make sure that I have an intention going into it, because the intention is like your North Star, right? It is what's going to drive. And this is what also is very important to allowing you to experience. It's part of the equation of experiencing miracles. And so when I was going to this ayahuasca ceremony, I still hadn't my intention figured out yet. And usually I always have it kind of formulated, if not days, weeks, and sometimes months before the journey. And I was listening to the shaman and getting acquainted with everything. And then I was like, okay, let me go to my mat to where I was going to be doing my journey. And let me just sit there and connect and tune in to what my intention needs to be. And as I sat there, all of a sudden I was overwhelmed with emotion, and I just started crying. And I just started saying over and over, I'm so exhausted of trying to control everything. I don't want to control anything anymore. I'm so exhausted. And then I started to tune into Mother Ayahuasca, and I said to her, I said, I'm exhausted. I give you full reign over this journey. Whatever you want me to do tonight, I will follow you. I surrender. I just don't want to control anything anymore. And I said, if you want me to puke all night, I will puke all night. If you want me to dance all night, I'll dance all night. I will go wherever you take me. And that level of surrender, where I was so trusting in the plant medicine to take me wherever she felt I needed to go, um, ended up being one of my most incredible journeys I ended up very quickly started seeing all of these light codes starting to whip by me. So first it was like just different colors of light and flashes and beams, like really fine beams of light, and then patterns, and then hieroglyphs and different symbols, and they were coming in different colors, and they were just whipping past me. And I was like, oh my gosh, am I getting downloaded with information? What is this? And then all of a sudden I realized I'm in a wormhole. And so as I was traveling through this wormhole, the next thing I know, I ended up on the other side, and I was in this AI reality. And in this AI reality, I was hovering, like my consciousness was hovering over a conveyor belt in this very gray, nondescript building. And on this conveyor belt was coming out of the wall. And as the belt started to turn, out of the wall came this rectangular plexiglass. And inside the plexiglass was a photo of the side profile of my face. And that plexiglass came out on the conveyor belt, and then it got scanned. And I thought, why is my face getting scanned? And then all of a sudden I heard, Nicole, we don't have much time. We've been waiting for this moment. We knew that you would be entering into a slipstream of consciousness, and we've been able to pull you out of the matrix. Like, what? And this woman starts talking to me, and I recognized her. And at the same time, I didn't know who she was, but she felt like family. She almost felt like a sister and a best friend all at once. And she said, we're here to remind you that you're doing a great job. And you agreed. We want to remind you that you agreed to go in with certain programs into the matrix for a reason. And I was like, okay. And they're like, we just want you to know you're doing a great job and you're on track. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And so this building that I was in, like where I believe I was on some kind of, I don't know if it was a ship or what it was, but it all had round walls. All the walls were curved. And the next thing I know, she's kind of gone, and I'm kind of left to my own devices. And so I start to walk. I feel myself being guided to walk down this hallway. And to my right is this door. And I open up the door and I go into this room. And it's maybe like, I don't know, like a 10 by 10 room, maybe not even that big. And I instantly realize I am in the room of all of my programs. And I'm like, well, okay, if I'm in the room of all of my programs, because I saw all these, like, I don't know, it was weird. It was like 8 tracks and all this kind of like stuff that like would be holding information. And I was like, well, if I'm outside of the matrix and I'm in the vault of my programs, then that means I can start pulling programs I don't want anymore. So I started to pull. I used my consciousness to start pulling programs that I was tired and done with. I'm like, I'm exhausted. I don't want to do this anymore. And I was like, I want this program installed now. And so I started installing like different programs, some for my business, some for my personal life. And then I came out of, like, I went into this high bliss state the rest of the journey. And I was able to tap into everyone who was purging in the room, because there must have been 30 of us in this room. And I could hear like everyone, and I was like, yeah, you purge your program. I was so happy for them. I'm like, you're doing it. Like, that's so great. Like nothing could get me down. So I come out of that journey, and within weeks of leaving that journey, I started to see the results of my life changing, holding on to these new programs, and the results of the old programs like leaving. And I couldn't believe it was so drastic of how my life started to shift and change. And I don't think I would have ever been able to experience that had I not fully just surrendered. And so being able to let go is to know that, one, it's that ultimate trust, that faith that so many of us lose because we're like, well, no, I got to take care of this. And what if I need to maybe control this? But to completely surrender is one of the most beautiful states to enter into, because anything is possible then.
Yeah. It's fascinating stuff, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we have the power to heal ourselves even. I mean, if we all you need to do is know how.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, that's the
And
trick.
also, be shown. If you don't like know how, just
Yeah.
call in, like be open to receiving
Ask.
and call it in.
Yeah. Listen to
Yeah.
Nicole Frolick on YouTube. You'll figure it out. You've got some great guests on your show. I've really enjoyed studying your channel over the last few days. Very eye-opening and healing.
Oh, thank you very much. I
So
appreciate
appreciate what
that.
you're doing. I hope people come over and subscribe to your channel. There's truly some amazing stuff over there, and I am going to purge some of your guests. I've seen it. I'm like, I want
Don't.
her. I want her. I want her. So it's going to happen. Guys, that's going to do it for us. Nicole, do you have any parting words of wisdom for the listeners as we get ready to enter this new phase of existence?
Know that we are heading into very unprecedented times for our collective. And we're going to be starting that in just a couple of weeks as Pluto moves into Aquarius. I expect dramatic awakenings that we've never seen before. Each and every one of us, I'm sure, over the next 20 years is going to experience, at minimum, probably a couple of very deep awakenings. We are coming into a time where it is your choice, but also recommended that you begin to understand what your own power is and to stop giving it away. And that means learning how to declare your own energetic sovereignty, understanding where you may be unconsciously giving it away or where you may be unconsciously not even wanting it. This is where we actually start to change the world through our own inner awakening. And it's going to be chaotic, but it's also going to be really exciting. So buckle up.
It is exciting. It is. It's chaotic. Perhaps we're all facing a part of ourselves here now recently that that we need to face, and everybody's going to come up with their own part that they need to face. This is mine. You have yours, and the listener has theirs. You know, we all have to face it. We all got to start healing, and that's the key to all this. Stay in high frequency. Stay positive. Everything Nicole Frolick is down in the description box below, guys. Make sure you click on those links and give her some attention. At least get over there and subscribe and watch some of her interesting stuff. Nicole, thank you so much for coming on Conflict Radio today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, that's going to do it for us, guys. Until next time, batten down the hatches and be safe.